Sergeant David William Wiedman of McDonoughville, Louisiana, became a fallen soldier at the edge of Bois de Fez forest near Cunel, France, on the eve of October 18, 1918. In just less than a month, World War I would come to an end. Dave, as his family would know him, was KOA less than 2 kilometers from the front line when a German shell hit the shed with the only stove in the area that he and 2 of his comrades had entered to get a hot meal. The building was less than 55 kilometers from Sedan, France, where World War I hostilities would end. The First World War was a far cry from those wars of the past. This war had a traditional static warfare consisting of miles of trenches to protect those from sporadic artillery and rifle fire, with a landscape between entrenched armies called no man's land, littered with bomb craters and death. Dave was an integral part of this war.
Dave was attached to A Company, 6th United States Engineers, American Expeditionary Forces, with the most enduring nickname serving under General John J. Pershing as Doughboy. Dave was one of the early engineers that would number around 3,000 and grow to more than 400,000 by the time of his death. Eventually, the unit would splinter into the Army Corps of Engineers. Although the war started in 1914, the United States did not enter until the spring of 1917. By then, 3 empires were collapsing. The Russian Empire was in revolt, the Austro-Hungarian Empire was in disarray, and the Ottoman Empire, which had defeated remnants of the Roman Empire, was becoming obsolete. The draft was implemented in the spring of 1917, but in any case, Dave found himself training to go overseas by October of the same year at the Washington Barracks in D.C. October, Dave would find himself training in D.C., but by December, he would be in France. The Allies, Britain and France, were excited to get the United States into the fight was an understatement. Pershing would consolidate the American Expeditionary Forces under his generalship for the rest of the war. October 3rd to the 7th, 1917, would find Dave learn to make a cot and familiarize himself at camp. For all of October, it was learning squad formation and rifle aiming, along with learning more profanity and dirty talk than he had experienced in all his life until that point. Mainly, learning to be a soldier and hoping the experience would benefit him later in the conflict. November, he would find himself assigned to Company A and pay of $29. He also learned to scale walls, drew his uniform, and looking like the regiment would be moving soon as articles were being created, mules shoed, and canteen closed.
Dave was invited to Mrs. Suman's Thanksgiving dinner at 520 Park Road, Northwest. Here he would meet Sergeant Philip Frank Lund, who Dave would call PF. They would be bunkies and friends through Dave's war. December 2nd, they board the transport SS George Washington, a former German liner, in New York Harbor. At sea with the SS Huron, USS Montana, ACR-13, and a destroyer. Rough seas and seasick. A man fell overboard from the Montana. The ships turned and rescued him, but later heard he died. Dave heard a dolphin hit the side of the ship loud enough to mistake for a torpedo. The ship would be quite a prize for a German submarine, with 7,000 souls on board. Finally, to Brest, France on the 20th, but didn't offload until the 22nd. Then loaded into boxcars like cattle, and after a few cold, sleepless nights in the boxcar, they reached the town of Pruthu. Dave would be quartered in a cold attic and try to sleep on the wood floors.
Christmas dinner would bring coffee, cookies, corned beef, crackers, cheese, wine, and bread, along with our first mail delivered. Also, Dave would get his first bath since leaving the States. January of 1918 would be cold and rainy, with brisk walks after dinner with PF to places like Châtellerault. Candles cost 6 cents each for warmth, and the first platoon would start work building latrines along with loading freight. By mid-month, Dave would travel by passenger train to Olino. The platoon was now sleeping in beds and mingling with the French engineers. Dave walked with PF this month to places like Malencourt, Sendravale, Janvalat, Mauville, and Olinos. Dave was also able to have a few steak dinners and enjoy a few moonlit nights. By the end of January and start of February, Dave was hearing the big guns and see a lot more French infantry.
Dave would be working to build an infirmary, load freight from the railroad cars to trucks, and assembled a mess shack, also promoted to corporal. Dave would enjoy his walks with PF, Farrar, Phipps, Hansen, and Bromerud to places like Vancourt, Falincourt, and Charmony.
moved to Linecourt. March would take Dave 100 kilometers to Bourselet, near Neufchâteau, and the platoon would help build Base Hospital 18. Weather is now frosty but clearing. Dave's platoon started working on the Swiss huts, mud sills, X-ray building, and foundations for a 20-bay hospital ward. They played a little baseball when they were able to play. Just before Easter on the 31st, Dave and Beery would get the exam for an officer's commission. April would be mostly cloudy. Payday would bring 127 francs and 50 centimes. Company A would play 502nd Engineers with a win in 12 innings, thanks to Dave, Hammer, and Shuttleworth. After the game, Dave would walk with PF and Hammer for some dinner and pumpkin pie. PF would catch a hedgehog under Hansen's bunk. Gas mask drill would start in earnest, along with lectures on trenches and entanglements. By the end of the month, the 1st platoon would load up and head to Amiens, a British sector full of French troops. Then they would move to Beaucourt with roads choked with British transports and big guns. Also see Australian troops, big balloons and British 902 howitzers. They now start firing those big guns at 8 in the evening. They have a Boche plane drop a few bombs, but nobody is injured. May and Dave sees his first tank. The month starts by placing wire and trench drains near La Honsoise. They worked on machine gun dugouts as shelling comes uncomfortably close enough to cover them in dirt. A British 6-incher returned a few souvenirs to Jerry. With summer days, the unit recorded its first gas casualties.
Dave would work with PF on their sleep area until dark on the 18th, finishing the month digging trenches and sandbag dugout for the officers. June would find the platoon working on sandbag revetments in the trenches. Dogfights in the air as Jerry would shoot down our big balloons. Traded our Enfields for Springfield rifles this month. PF, Hess, Hansen, Phipps would walk through Salaude, Cellionex to get cookies and canned peaches, returning in time for lunch and watch a ball game when time allowed. They also walked to Renoncourt, Pot de Metz, and Salaveau. By mid-month, they would load back on rail cars and head to Courbriand to do more work with the infantry on trenches. The platoon gets its first taste of dysentery, along with the first mail since Amiens. July takes Dave to Fosse, where PF and Heath dig more trenches. Dave is now sleeping to the music of artillery and machine gun fire, which seems unusually more active. This is a bad month for the unit, and the start of the German Champagne-Marne offensive. Clendening, Cooper, Barry, Brown, Leifer, and Olsen are killed, along with all but 2 horses. Sergeant Harriman is hit in the neck as shells are falling everywhere. One lands just a few feet from Dave's shelter, but did not penetrate. Suddenly, the ammunition dump is hit, and all hell breaks loose. Shells are exploding in every direction. Gas is used by the Germans, forcing the platoon to the protection of the dugouts. PF and Dave worked the next day, cleaning equipment and clothing, but the German push was stopped. Of the 34 in the 1st platoon, only 20 are left after the shelling. Upon making it back to the front, Dave sees so many dead Germans, not a pleasing sight. The platoon works to get up 3 trestles as German machine guns and trench mortars take aim. August is a time to repair roads, hospitals, and bridges.
PF and Dave dig a latrine while Schaefer guards them for German patrols. Horses and equipment must be cleared for reinforcements. The platoon is tasked with repairing the bridge over the Marne River. Dave sees where Lieutenant Gettin Roosevelt is killed and buried in the Valley of Charmer to the left of Coulanges. The platoon goes to see the old home of the famous story writer Jean de La Fontaine and ramble over the chateau built in the 8th century. After drills, they go to Forcey and listen to the Ruthsforts entertained by singing a few songs. Dave is on the move again to Montmeriel, only to be loaded onto boxcars and finally hike to Hue de la Sequante, reaching Montiers by mid-month. They will drill, starting at 5 in the morning to 5 at night, required to shave and wear the blouses for the rest of the month. The shaving is important for a secure fit for the gas mask, but it still takes the joy out of life, as some would say. After the general of the division inspects the troops, everyone is given a 72-hour pass, with most going to Bar-le-Duc. September starts with a hike to the woods near Abainville. Dave is able to see movies at the YMCA tent, which is playing Dead Shot Baker. Hammer, Cooper, Aubrey, and Sachet rejoin the company from the hospital. The company get a new captain, Whiting. Dave is close enough to see the gun flares on the horizon. The platoon is working on the roads between Richette, St. Boscant, and Essy, which have large shell holes. The Germans had occupied this area since 1914. They start the month camped in Marvoisin. Finally, rations. For breakfast, they have coffee with milk, sugar, jam, bread, butter, beans, and bacon. For dinner, they have coffee, sugar, milk, bread, butter, French fried potatoes, salmon fish balls, bacon, chocolate, cigars, and cigarettes.
They get a newspaper which reports St. Michel Drive is going great with 15,000 German prisoners. By mid-month, Dave moves to Jolfcourt with the whole division, start hiking to the woods with PF near Donbass. The Germans have been pushed back 5 miles, but still a lot of shelling. Working on the road near Esnes, and weather is miserable. This area was considered no man's land for several years with extensive damage. Only a few stumps left of the forest, and villages are just piles of rocks. Every kind of conveyance and war machine is going up to the front, with traffic at a snail's pace. News of Bulgaria falling, and the British have taken Cambrai. Our platoon came under attack from a German airplane and had to take cover. Dave, PF, and Leon start back to Montfaucon by the end of the month. October, aerial activity is quite exciting, with planes over them most of the time. Anti-aircraft guns stay busy. PF and Dave sleep in a shell hole with snipers all around and getting occasional gas alarms. Dave is told to stand by as they are moving to be classified as reserve infantry and prepare for the front line. The roll call for 1st Platoon is Sergeants Crosser and Lund, Corporals Wiedman, Schaefer, Powell, Sullivan, Caldwell, Shoemaker, Boland, Langhorn, Anderson, Sandstrom, Seltzer, Anstel, Bloser, Murphy, Clive, and Cleary. A total of 18 of the 34 who start the campaign. At this time, I think the diary of Sergeant P.F. Lund provides the best description of the following events.
October 14th, Monday, cloudy. After breakfast, we again stand to and then study our iron issues some more. Have the 1st Platoon bury our horses and then watch on of our ammunition dumps go up. The artillery is roaring and we are making a hop over. The 58th Infantry comes up at noon, scatters and digs in all over the hillside. We see a bunch of Fritz prisoners going to the rear. At 4:30, we get orders to move at once and go out to the woods, close to the line. We dig in at once. We go on alert from 8 to 10 and then sleep. There is considerable shelling at night and some gas sent over. October 15th, Tuesday, cloudy. Shelling lets up as day breaks. Sergeants Nass and Holden are wounded, also Private Arnold. Corporal Cibolo was hit on the way here. There are gas casualties in F Company. Hot chow is sent up and we lie low all day as are shelled hourly. The papers say that Germany has agreed to peace terms, but you gotta show us. October 16th, Wednesday, cloudy, rain. The platoon gets wet through at night and are on the alert all the time, but are not called upon. October 17th, Thursday, rainy. Still standing to, wet to the skin, and most of us are sick. C Company goes to the line, and we are expecting a call at any time. Have a letter from Mac. At midnight, we go out with guns and carry up wire to a dump near the line. The hike out is 3 kilometers through the mud and by dead bodies of horses and men. We are dodging shells and machine guns most of the time, and the gas is constant. October 18th, Friday, clear. We get in at 5 a.m., and I sit by the stove till breakfast time. For a wonder, the sun shines, and we took partly dried out. Wash my feet and get clean socks on. Just at supper time, the Boscha starts shelling our woods. The first shot hits a shed where some of the boys are eating chow and kills Wiedman, Sharp, and Bourget, wounding Felden and Seltzer. The shells rain in fast, and some of us take to the open field and get down in the shell holes where we are quite safe. The shelling is continuous and lasts until 8 p.m. The 2nd, 3rd, and 4th platoons then go out and put up wire, the 1sts remaining in as I return to our camp, and after posting a gas guard, roll in to get what sleep I can under the conditions. Others who have been wounded or gassed are Gearhart, Solheim, Adair, Frenchie, Albrecht, and Prochaska.
October 19th, Saturday, cloudy, cool. After breakfast, I check up on the 1st platoon, then assign detail and bury Wiedman, Bourget, and Sharp, first removing their personal things and placing them with Captain Adams. Wiedman and I have been bunkies for so long, and he was such a splendid fellow that my task is not the most pleasant one, and I feel his loss. Bean obligingly shaves me as I pass his dugout.
At 4:30, the order comes to suspend all details and everybody rest. Eat supper and roll in. At 11:30, Bernie wakes me and tells me that the company will go out at once, our orders being to march out beyond our wire dump and dig in on the gill side and remain there until 7 a.m. when the infantry were to attack the woods in front. Our job being to follow up and under protective barrage, wire the northeast edge of the woods, and then return to camp.
How differently it would all turn out if you read on in Sergeant Lund's diary. Sergeant Lund's diary can be found at the Library of Congress under his name in the Veterans History Project collections. The letters he wrote to David's mother, and this part of the diary, is actually tied to one of the most important and deadliest American campaigns of World War I, the Meuse-Argonne American, British, and French offensive. This area had been a battlefield since 1914 and was a wasteland of shell craters, shattered forest, destroyed villages, and trenches. This would be America's largest battle in World War I, with over 1.2 million American soldiers involved, approximately 26,000 killed and 95,000 wounded. It remains one of the bloodiest campaigns in U.S. military history. Sergeant Lund's accounts make Dave's story even more special in that most casualty notifications were short official notices. The letters to Dave's mother were detailed enough to provide a good location for the day Dave went west, as PF would say. You can tell they were close, as the letters and diary tells of their walks, bunkies, burial, and aftermath, all personally touching. PF gave us the exact date of death, unit, location, cause, and personal testimony describing his character and reputation among the men. This is the sort of documentation I have spent years wishing to find, as it provides details that military records usually do not contain. Dave's home at 318 Herschel Street in McDonaldville, Louisiana, would be annexed by Gretna, and the address would change to 318 Wiedman Street, Gretna, Louisiana. In Dave's personal belongings sent back to his parents, we found an envelope addressed to Dave from Mary Falk, who was involved with Dave's church. Dave's military credits would include engagements at Champagne-Marne and the Second Battle of Verdun. He would be promoted from private to corporal April 20th and to sergeant August 27th. PF would bury Dave along the wooded area at Bois de Fez, then moved to Grave 16-8, Section 14, Plot 4 at Argonne American Cemetery near Romagne. On June 17, 1921, Dave's body was sent via Antwerp, then Hoboken, to Walter Wiedman, arriving in McDonaldville on August 19th of the same year. Unfortunately, his father Walter would die a few months later in a devastating train accident between Plaquemine and Addis, Louisiana. Within 15 years, his mother and sister, the only other sibling, would be gone, leaving only James Wiedman Parker as the only living person with a direct nexus relationship. Thanks to P.F. Lund, the Library of Congress, and the National Archives, Memorial Day is a good time to honor all those who served and sacrificed. To Uncle Dave, who we finally have the honor of meeting.